Hey, welcome back to Gold Scratch. So this video is a follow-up. We made a video a while ago about Merrick's 400 Pontiac GTO engine, and I think the title of the video was it a machine shop ripoff? Let me get that out of the way first of all. We don't have any information that says that. That was the suspicion and the evidence that we have based on a lot of forensic work, I guess, that I've done. I don't have anything to say that. So, but this is a continuation. We have the block back in the shop, and the next clip you see will be at West Lorne Machine Shop. Albert and Walt did all the work for me on the block, so we have a little interview with them. I think you're going to enjoy these guys. It's just short, and we're going to come back here and show you what we're going to do. There's a dilemma, an oiling dilemma in Pontiacs. We're going to go through the whole process, explain how the oil flows through a Pontiac, and you can make your own decision whether or not you need to drill that little hole at the back of the block. So that's all for now. Just an introduction. We'll go to West Lorne next. Hey, welcome to Gold Scratch. So today we're not at Gold Scratch. We're at West Lorne Machine in West Lorne, Ontario, which is more than a half-hour drive down the 401 for me. But I do it because they're good guys. They do great work, and they appreciate the business. So this is Albert and Walt. And for what it's worth, some of these guys running these machine shops are even older than me. And that's the point I need to make. It's a valuable resource, I'm sure, in Canada and probably in the US as well. That's guys like Walt and I and Albert are getting older. Albert's a pretty young guy, actually, but
yes.
Walt's a little older, and so am I. That's a valuable resource. There's lots of knowledge, and it's not getting replaced fast enough anyways. But these guys do good work for me, and that's why I drove all this way. So the subject of this video, maybe you can show the engine, honey. It's all wrapped up. This is Merrick Hammer's, honey, go over here. Merrick Hammer's Pontiac engine, and it's all, they got it all covered up. It's a rainy day today, so I don't want to break it apart. But what they've done for me is a few things. The issue on the engine, and I'm going to let Albert talk about it. When Merrick brought me the engine in pieces, he said it had noisy valve lifters. And so I threw out a question on the previous video. That video's got over 42,000 hits already. By the way, when I was on the way here, I passed 10,000 subscribers while I was driving here. So thank you very much for all my subscribers. So why don't I let Albert tell us what he found when he took it apart. We have a little clip, a short video of that. We're going to try and plug it together with this video. So go ahead, Albert.
Okay. When I pulled all the oil plugs out, the rear on, I believe it's the passenger side, had about a 60 thou hole in the back of the pipe plug, which would allow oil to drain off. As well as the front two, they put pipe plugs in instead of the normal frost plugs.
Right, which created more work.
Yeah.
And more time and more cost, obviously. So because of them doing that, that created more work getting them from out. If you put their normal frost plugs in there, that would not have been an issue. You just pull them out, right, Albert? So
yes.
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
So the theory is that you need that oil draining off that little hole. Some of the guys, anyway, that weighed in have a theory that you need that extra oil to oil the camshaft gear, and some think to bleed the air out of that's the main galley that feeds the valve lifters. So one of the things I always say, the OEM guys were pretty smart. They didn't put a hole there, so we're not putting it back with a hole either.
No.
And we may have quieter valve lifters as a result of it. Now, if you had a solid lifter camshaft and you had a bronze gear driving your distributor, you might want that extra oil, and you don't need it for the valve lifters. It probably wouldn't matter, right? You guys agree with that?
Yes.
If you got a hydraulic camshaft, it needs to get the oil.
Yep.
So that's what we found. Unfortunately, it's already all covered up, but these guys did great work for me. They also decked the block, 18 thousandths of an inch. That's going to get our quench right in the range of 45 thousandths, which is the target. So when I get home, we're going to start putting this thing back together. We will make more videos. So Walt, I need you to say a couple words about, Walt's been doing this for a long time, even longer than me, believe it or not. So
well, we've been in the automotive business here for 47 years. And we started in 1976. And I started at the McCurley's in 64. And we have started my automotive shop here in 1980 with a rad shop. And it all worked together. We do a lot of diesel work. And we do a lot of vintage stuff now. It's coming back. That we do Mustangs, we do tractors, anything that it's old that we can work on. We sure appreciate it, and we can get the parts. We'll replace it and fix it like it was still in the showroom. So that's, and I have my good help here too. Albert is a good tech, and Steve is really good up front with parts. So we have a sort of a full circle here that we can service the public and the farmers all in one stop. We can do it all here, and they can watch while we do it, and we take videos like Alan does of what we do, and they really respect that video that we show them, that their engine failed because of what? It warped head, or the flywheel was warped, or the radiator leaked like it was sieve, was all plugged with mouse nest in them. We find them sometimes. So that's just part of our work is helping other people out of trouble and showing why they are in our shop looking for labor to repair their products.
very good. Thanks, Walt. It's a classic shop. You guys do good work. We're going to do more stuff with them in the future. And we're going to get Barry Cameron's Pontiac going back together when I get home. And we'll make future videos about it. So even though I already have 10,000 subscribers, I still need more. So please like and subscribe. And Albert, anything more you can say?
No, I think I've got it all.
Thanks for doing a good job for me.
No
And
problem.
we appreciate it. Box nice and squeaky clean and ready to go back together. Hey, welcome to go back to Gold Scratch. So we made one clip, then we went to West Lauren Machine. So I hope you enjoyed Albert and Walt at West Lauren Machine, who did the work for me. And we have the block back in my shop right now. I've actually started to put the main bearings in it and measure them up. But the thing we want to cover off first, dilemma, controversy, conflict, whatever you want to call it, of this little oil plug at the back of the block. I'm going to show you the detail of that. A lot of Pontiac experts believe that that plug should be drilled. And let me just show you, when we took this engine apart, when it came from the machine shop, it had a hole in that plug, and that's a 16th drill, and it's sloppy in there. So it's a little more than a 16th of an inch hole. And that's the plug that came out of it. The plug that's in it right now does not have a hole. So the conventional thinking of Pontiac experts is that hole should be drilled a 32nd of an inch, and to allow a little bit of oil to flow onto the distributor gear. So we're going to go through the whole oiling system in detail, and I'm going to show you why I don't think it needs to be done. Now, one of the issues is, and probably where the idea came from, Pontiac Super Duty engines did have a 32nd of an inch hole in this plug. I'll show you where the plug goes in a minute. It's really at the very end of the oil, or the trail that the oil takes through the engine. And they did that because the Pontiac Super Duties had high-duty oil pumps that had more pressure and more volume. They put more stress on the distributor drive gear. And so the logic is they put that hole there to spray a little extra oil on the distributor drive gear. So, I suspect what happened is a lot of guys saw that and said, if it's good for Super Duty, it's good for me, so I'll do that too. So one of the issues that we were dealing with here, when Merrick brought me this engine, he said the valve lifters were very noisy. Well, if you drain oil off where it's supposed to be feeding your lifters, that may contribute to that. I can't say that's the only reason. The other thing to mention is it's a 16th hole. The conventional thinking is the 32nd. So 16th is only twice as much as the 32nd, but it flows 4 times as much oil. It's the square of the diameter, guys. Okay, so if you double the diameter of a pipe, it flows 4 times as much oil. So 16th is a big, and it's way too much for sure. The real answer probably is a 32nd. Probably won't hurt. Lots of guys do it. Probably works okay. But here's my reasoning. I'm going to show you the oiling diagram, how it works. One of the other backups is, yeah, let's go through the oil diagram. So I'll show you it on the diagram, and then I'm going to show you on the engine. So there's the oil pump, and the pump pumps the oil up, and at this pipe here, it goes through the oil filter, which in the case of a Pontiac is the external bolted. And then it goes right across, the filter is on the passenger side, but there's a channel that goes right across to the driver's side. So this black line you see here is the main feed of oil down the driver's side of the engine. And when it's doing that, it's feeding all the lifters, of course. The lifters are, and there's a almost a 90-degree angle from that oil channel into the lifter valleys. And that's how you feed the lifters. And while it's doing that, these lines here are feeding the main bearings, main crankshaft bearings. So all the crankshaft bearings get fed while you're going down the driver's side. When it gets to the front, the very front passage, after it passes the last lifter, it goes down to the main bearing, the front main bearing, and the oil passage then goes back up to the tunnel on the right side, on the passenger side. So that drives the oil, pushes the oil down the passenger side in the same tunnel, feeding only the lifters now, because the main bearings have already been fed by the driver's side. So for that reason, at the very end of that tunnel, that's where this little plug is, right here. I'm pointing to it right now. Okay? So at the very end of that tunnel is where we put this plug. Now behind that, when the distributor is installed, is a distributor drive gear. So the logic is you want oil to spray on the distributor drive gear. The other logic is to bleed air off out of the system. Well, once it gets to this point, the last lifter has already been serviced. And the distance is very, very short. So, and there's not really, in my view anyway, I guess, air is not an issue. And bleeding air off the front is not an issue because the oil is flowing through here, back out, and all the way back to the back of the engine. So for that reason, my view is that the oil plug is not necessary. Now, just a little bit of homework that I did. I do have this Pontiac book about how to maximize performance in Pontiacs. Nothing in there about drilling that hole in a regular 400 Pontiac engine. So Super Duty engine, Pontiac did it. On these engines, Pontiac didn't do it. So that's where I'm at. So on the block, let's try to show you on the block now. So here's on this side, we'll try to start on this side. See the nice job these guys did? This block's been decked, 18,007 inch. So we're going to fix our quench by doing that. It's got a new hone, 600 grit hone in it. And so it's ready to go. They also painted it with this special cast blast gray primer. And I think Merrick wants to paint the Pontiac blue back on it himself. Obviously, when you have an engine hot tank, the paint comes off of it. So anyway, the oil, after the oil pump feeds the oil in the filter and back out of the filter, it goes right across the block. Down the tunnel is just underneath where the valve lifters are. Okay, all the way along. And all the main bearings are getting fed as it's doing that. And the lifters are getting fed. At the very front, you can see a 90-degree passage, and that tunnel is just next to where the lifter bores are, and that's how the lifter bores get their oil. Okay. Then at the very front, if you took these plugs out, obviously oil would come right out of here. The reason this is here is for the machining operation. Obviously, they needed the tunnel to be open. So pipe plugs have been installed. One of the issues if you're building a Pontiac, if you get this plug in too deep, it's the same problem that small block Chevs have on the top plug only. If you get this plug in too deep, it can actually block off the passage of oil. It goes down to the main bearing and then back up the other side and down the passenger side, okay? So that's how the oil flows. We'll try to show you that with the engine upside down as well. See how it flows. Thanks, Alec. Let's look at it from the bottom. That's the beginning of it. Comes up this side. That's on. You can see in the casting. That's the tunnel there that the oil flows. Okay, up to the main bearing, and there's another groove underneath the bearing cap to drive oil to the other side, down, which is now the passenger side on this side. And the three little dots there are just in front of where the oil plug is. I can feel that plug. One of the issues with Pontiacs, and if you read on, I had to go on the forums to do my homework for this video. A lot of mistakes get made where machine shops remove that plug when they do the hot tanking and they forget to put it back in. And that would be a disaster because you'd have no oil pressure virtually. And one of the problems is this little plug at the back. I don't know if you can see it, Alec. If you want to get that plug out, is how this little silver plug that you see there, that's, you call that a frost plug, but that plug comes out in order to get, where am I at here? I can't see myself.
I got it.
Okay, okay. That plug has to come out in order to get the oil plug back in and out. So that's where we're at with the Pontiac. As you can see, I've started to install the main bearing. That's just where I'm at. The crankshaft's all cleaned up. We're using Cleveite 77 bearings. This is the conventional style with the groove on the top only and no groove on the bottom. And that's what we're going to go with. That's the way Pontiac did it. And so, and these are good bearings. I had all the dimension checks done with the other bearings that were in it before. I got to do all that again as well. So before I forget, thank you for watching Gold's Garage. We're well past our 10,000. Now we got to get 20,000, right? That's the next target. So it just makes us thirsty for more. And I know I'm not going to get them if I don't make good videos. So we're going to work really hard. I got lots of good help from Alec and Mike feeding me with content all the time. And we got lots of good ideas to give you guys good informational videos that'll be helpful. So I want to cover off a few things from previous videos instead of the tip of the day today. First of all, on my fastener issue, the poor lowly lock washer that I bashed, and sorry about that, but mostly the comments agree with me, some don't, and that's fine. Everybody can have their point of view. The main issue that I probably didn't cover well enough is if you have any connection properly torqued with the right bolt, the right nut on it, preferably a flat hard washer. And I've got a whole video about fasteners, by the way. If you look back in my video library, there's a video about fasteners. You should have a flat hard washer. The softer washer will soften the joint and make it weaker. But if it's torqued properly, you don't need anything to help you. You don't need Loctite either. Loctite is like sort of belt and suspenders. If you got a good joint, it's just a nice thing to do, but it probably isn't necessary. It doesn't hurt. Loctite's great if you got something where you can't torque it, you can't tighten it, but otherwise you probably don't really need it. And I got a comment from Will Casey. If you remember in the previous video, I built the engine for Will's Corvette engine. Will worked in the aerospace industry, and he gave me an affirmation. He said that's his point of view. NASA doesn't even allow lock washers on site, so that gives you an idea. I'm pretty sure they put some thought into that before they made that decision. So the other thing I mentioned, 3/8 and larger, get rid of your lock washers. Why didn't I cover 1/4 and 5/16 or metric or whatever? In the very small sizes, there's not enough force in the torque to damage the washer. That's the real reason. The bigger it gets, if you take like a 1-inch bolt and torque it to spec, it'll spit the washer right out the side of the connection. So that's why small ones, and maybe in some cases where you can't tighten something, you can't torque it properly, in the small sizes, it may help. Okay, so let's leave it at that. So I want to cover a couple more points about the issue, the video that I made about vacuum advance and timing. And one of the things the example that I used, and I guess we're back to my chart, we still have it here. All the data that I used to make this curve was out of the manual about the L79. So just to confirm, there are probably exceptions somewhere else too. But in that manual, every engine that GM made did exactly the same thing, except the L88. And I can't explain why. Now that was the L88 in 1968 was one of the first engines that had they called it transistorized ignition, other than ignition points like we have. So that's probably one of the reasons why. So, but one of the points that I made, and I got called on it, and I probably didn't do a good job of that, so let me correct that. And the point that commenters made was the main difference between vacuum port and manifold vacuum is manifold vacuum is vacuum at idle, gives you advance at idle. Port vacuum doesn't give you vacuum. That doesn't give you advance at idle, but it increases as you accelerate. And I kind of created the impression that if you had port vacuum, it would continue to accelerate. No, at wide open throttle, port vacuum will fall out too. It won't do any damage. Port vacuum was really an emissions issue. And one of the thoughts, and not to get too theoretical, but in the early age when they had air pumps, the mentality was the solution to pollution is dilution. So in order to get good tests at the exhaust pipe, they installed an air pump that pumped air into every port on the exhaust manifold. And what they really wanted to do was finish the combustion process in the manifold. So when they take a test at the tailpipe, what they're measuring is oxygen. If there's oxygen in the tailpipe, that means you didn't get full combustion. So the idea of getting full combustion in the exhaust manifold was the intent of fixing that. So kind of going down a rabbit hole a little bit, but that's one of the logics behind port vacuum advance as well. So another example, on the dyno, we do not use vacuum advance at all. Vacuum advance is not a performance tuning issue. When your foot's full on the gas, you don't have any. So we do a dyno, we start at 3,000 RPM, we load the engine, we go to full throttle. Vacuum advance can't help anyway, let's put it that way. So we don't even use it. One of the things I also mentioned, I got to correct. I mentioned when I was showing the distributor, if you want a faster advance, this curve that we showed here, you can put, I think I said heavier springs. No, you use lighter springs. And I actually got, I think it's XL sells a kit, different colored springs, and there's lighter, softer, etc. The weaker that spring is, obviously, the easier it is for the weights to fly out and the faster you're going to advance. Back in the day, we just took them and stretched them a little bit, and because we didn't have XL kits available. Or some guys just take one off. That's one of the other ways you can get a faster advance. So wanted to correct that. I don't like to leave any misleading information on my channel. So I go through the video after to see if I created the wrong impression, and I look at your comments. So one of the other issues about vacuum advance is, if you want to have a good example for yourself, if you have vacuum advance on the manifold and your engine's idling nicely and you already got the timing set and the vacuum is connected, just pull the hose off the carburetor at the vacuum port, doesn't really matter which end of it, and probably your engine will stall. If not, the RPM will go down 200 or 300 RPM. And that's because you got to give the engine what it wants. Okay, so how do you correct for that? When we go to the dyno, we don't have vacuum advance. So what we do is we just open the throttle plates a little more with this adjustment screw. When you open the throttle plates, that makes it run okay. But if you're on the street and you do that, there's a little transfer passage under there. Oh, I don't know if you can see or not. Anyway, trust me, there is. And as the throttle plates open, they expose more of that transfer passage. When you do that, now you're allowing more fuel to get into your combustion chamber that it can't burn at idle. So the closer you can get that throttle plate closed and get your idle adjustment done right. If that throttle plate is open, when you do the adjustment with the adjusting screws, it may not make much difference because your throttle plates are open too much, and the fine adjustment you're trying to get with your idle adjustment is not going to be effective. So, okay, I think I covered as many points off as I wanted to. Leave me comments, questions if I didn't get it right, because it's important that I do. And if you have any questions, I'd like to resolve them. So, hope you found this interesting. We will be making more videos as we get Merrick's Pontiac engine together, and it'll be running on the test stand eventually. And thank you for watching Gold's Garage.